Too much holiday food. Oh, God. I don't want to move. I don't want to work. I don't want to do anything. Ooh, cake!
Do you live, eat, and sleep the hotel industry? Looking to brush up on your game? You've come to the right place. Welcome to No Vacancy, the hospitality industry's #1 podcast, with your host, Glenn Hausman.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the No Vacancy Podcast with me, your host, Glenn Hausman. Wow, I can't believe we've made it to the end of 2018. This is our last show of the year. 52 shows that we did, all original content all year long. No, I didn't take any vacations this year because giving you great podcasts is my #1 goal in life. Plus, I have no friends, so I got nothing better to do than do these recordings anyway. Anyway, just getting around. I'll be sure to check out NoVacancyNews.com. Having a great time with that site. Check out all of our videos that are on that site, which are being brought to you now by SkyTouch. So I want to thank them for sponsoring our weekly videos. Also, this podcast is brought to you in part by Duetto, the revenue strategy technology platform thousands of hotels are using to make more money. And be sure to check them out at GetRevenueResults.com. That's GetRevenueResults.com. You'll catch some great videos there on how management teams such as yours can collaborate to make more money in your hotel. We've been running such great profits for so many years. We want you to keep making money, and this is going to help you figure out ways to make even more income. Also, what a great year this has been. We got Red Roof as a sponsor this year. We launched all sorts of new talk shows, such as Checking In with Anthony and Glenn, which I co-host with Anthony Melchiori of Hotel Impossible. The Hotel Design Podcast. We're in the middle of a great 20-episode run on that show. Plus, the Hotel Tech Podcast will continue to bring you throughout the new year. So, without further ado, I want to bring on my awesome guest. We've had him on before. That's, of course, Mr. Chris Green with Chesapeake Hospitality, who is making his first appearance on our show with a brand new title, Chief Commercial Officer. Mr. Chris Green, how are you, sir?
Glenn, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, happy end of year to you. I can't believe we've made it through another year.
I know. It goes so fast. I have a system-wide call every quarter with our team, and yesterday I was telling everybody that this year felt like we ran one of those Spartan races, and I always feel this way because right. I never can figure out why on about 15 December my brain and my body seems to want to start shutting down. But I think it's because we run these obstacle courses called the hotel industry, and there's all these up and downs and the changes that we go through. And then you get to the end of the year and you're just like, you need a little bit of time to reset. So it's a good time to talk and catch up because we're through another obstacle course of a year.
Well, I'm really glad that you made it. And for me personally, I love this time of year, that last week of the year when a little inside baseball for you folks out there. Most of the public relations firms that I deal with on a regular basis to help us get this great content, they're closed all week. That means none of the major hotel companies are going to be making big announcements. It's just quiet and dead out there. I love this week. It lets me catch up on all of that stuff that I said I would get to throughout the entire year, but never had a chance to get to. So I'm loving the peace and quiet. Plus, I got to go see some concerts this past weekend, which was a whole lot of fun. But more interesting, Chris, you're now Chief Commercial Officer. What the heck is that, and what does it mean for Chesapeake Hospitality?
Well, thanks for asking. So, Chesapeake, and you've been around us for several years.
Yeah.
We've continued to grow thoughtfully as a company. This year we expect to reach some milestones in the company for number of properties managed and bring our estate closer to 10,000 rooms under management, which we've been multiple years of 15 to 18% growth of our company. And as we grew, Chesapeake, we're unique. We believe we have a unique offering that's really centered around our culture and how we care for not only our people but our clients, and ultimately driving results based on the focus on those key metrics more than, it's not that we don't have pros, we do, but by having this great culture, we attract great people. And so as we've expanded our footprint and continue to grow, we realized that for us to stay true to who we are, that we want people to experience what's possible in this business, whether they're associates joining our company, whether they're new clients coming to work with Chesapeake, whether they're our vendors, that someone had to be in a role kind of overseeing the strategic actions that support all of that that belief. And so in September, I moved into a new role where I will be at a strategic level overseeing, the development and growth of our company, all the associate experience, all the sales and marketing, how it's delivered to the marketplace, basically every piece of our offering, and making sure that it aligns with our mission of being the very best manager that we can be. And it's an exciting new role. It's different for me. I was in, me, I was the guy that was in the weeds on every single thing as COO for the past 8 years. And to step back a little bit has been, a little intimidating, but quite frankly, it's really shown me how great our people are, because we were able to make some key promotions, and those people have just been knocking it out of the park the past 90 days. Everybody stepped in some new roles, and they know what we do and how we do it, and we're just going to be a stronger company because of it.
Well, the first question I have for you, does this mean you get to see your family more often?
Well, I think the travel pace is going to stay pretty steady.
Right.
Just because transitioning to the development side, we're going to be working on, and we have projects going in several different locations around the country, so that's going to add some travel. But yes, I think it will take. I've been able to hand a big piece over to Lisa Carlson, who's our new SVP of Operations, and as you guys and everybody listening to this call knows, that is the real 24/7, 365 role, and Lisa was ready. So yeah, Glenn, I think I'm going to have some more dinners at home, if that's what you're asking.
It really is. And basically the entire reason why I do this podcast is to find out if people get to eat dinner at home with their family. So it's good to know that that's exactly what you're doing. But, what's interesting to me, Chris, about this whole notion of chief commercial officer is you've been speaking to me over the entire length of our relationship, and I've known you for many years at this point, interviewing you from time to time and just getting to know Chesapeake. And you've always said that you want to grow smartly in the right way. And a lot of companies say that, while at the same time they keep telling me that they want to double in size all the time. But it sounds to me, by you reorienting the way the company is built, that this was a distinct move to help you be able to deliver on that promise to keep the same corporate culture and grow smartly instead of just quickly for the sake of growth.
Yeah, and I'm glad you pointed that out, because that's really what it was based on. Was we determined that at the size and scope that we've reached, that it would be very simple for what we call our framework of controls and our framework of success to break down as the enterprise, kind of exceeded a certain scale. And so if we didn't take time to step back and evaluate, and you were with us at our conference, so you did a great job speaking for us. But our conference theme was unplugged, and what we really were talking about was we've had this great run of success and growth, but we talked about unplugging, reevaluating, and thinking about the things that made us the great company we are, and how do we keep those to be true. So this whole process, which I want to be thankful to the company for kind of organizing this to happen, but this whole process was about staying true to who we are. And so we've decided as a company we're going to do it the Chesapeake way, even if that's contrarian to a lot of other companies or anybody in our peer set. We're going to do it our way. And, it's been 15% growth, and if we stay on that path, we'll have a greater company than any of us ever imagined. And we're going to do it right. That's our commitment as a group.
That's a lot of growth to continue to do over time, 15%. Because if you have 10 hotels, 15% isn't as big of a chore to increase as if you have 40 hotels, for example, right?
Sure.
So
sure.
That's a lot more of a challenge, because it means onboarding more hotels. It means bringing on more staff, making sure that the training is consistent. And as companies grow, and I love that we're having this conversation, because there are so many companies out there that are doing so great and expanding. How do you grow smartly while keeping that corporate culture intact and giving those people the pathway for success at the same time, which you've done with your new SVP, for example?
So you have to do what we talk about. I mean, we've talked about it since we were 10 hotels. We got to prepare the fields for rain. And what we mean by that is we've always hired people before we need them. So we have very small portfolios at Chesapeake. So once we have a VP of ops that's approaching 75% capacity, possibly in their portfolio, we'll bring on the next VP of ops, and they'll do nothing but train and have a very small portfolio for a long enough period of time to ensure to ensure that they know what Chesapeake does. I mean, listen, we just brought on a guy who's been a professional in the business 25 years, but he was attracted to our company for the culture and what we're committed to. He brings a wealth of experience, but we still made sure that he went through deep immersion into our culture before he's allowed to even go out and work in the field. And so we make that investment on the Chesapeake side, on the management company side, to make sure that, when I send a new VP out to the field, he's not going out and representing his past management company. He's Chesapeake, and he understands what that means and how it's different. So it's a little bit more costly on the management company side, but we like to think it creates an experience where every owner gets the Chesapeake experience from the beginning, and it's not some question mark.
Yeah, well, let me see you and raise you one. I love what you said about the notion of that they represent Chesapeake when they get out there, because if you don't have that training and you just put somebody out there, then they still do have that mindset of wherever they had been previously in their career, right? Whether it had been 25 years working for major hotel companies or just out of college and you worked in a retail job. So you need to have that culture aspect of it, which costs you more up front, but without that would probably cost you a whole lot more going forward if they didn't represent Chesapeake and what you believe your values are.
Correct. I mean, that's why we do it. I mean, it's not a new business proposition. You either invest up front and you take the investment out and invest in something that makes a difference, or you see the repercussions of not having investing up front and you see transitions. Our estate has extremely low turnover. I mean, as a matter of fact, over the past 2 years, the only 2 hotels that have changed out of our system have sold.
Right.
So, I mean, we don't have people that change managers for any reason. Our people that are with us, our clients, they understand. They hired us because of who we are and our consistency and our 61 years of success, and that's what they believe in. So we have a very high retention rate. All of our clients are wanting to do new developments when the time is right. So organic growth combined with our message reaching the right potential clients is plenty for us to do our growth strategy.
Excellent. Makes a lot of sense. So with all the changes that have happened, how did you see 2018 overall, both for your company, and then let's take a broader look in what you thought about the entire hospitality industry from the community that you function in, going to all the financial conferences?
Yeah, so I like to look at the year, and I know you do too. I break it up into like conference segments, so
right.
We kick off the year out in Los Angeles at Alice, and
Yep.
I would say that I felt like in January of this past year, there was what I would call a cautious excitement, right? We were still wondering, we had been at that point on about 90 months of RevPAR growth, and people are still wondering, is it going to stay? Is it going to go? What are we going to be, 3%, 4%? So at those rates and at these high all-time highs, I felt like there was still a good energy around it. And then you go into the first quarter, and the first quarter was okay generally as a business. It wasn't great. It wasn't terrible. But we did have a soft second quarter, and that's when you're at Hunter Conference, right? Down in Atlanta, and you're talking about that. So I noticed a much more guarded kind of opinion in Hunter, and then you go through the summer, and then we had a bunch of storms, right? So the storms really impacted RevPARs. They impacted certain market performance. We started seeing weakness in some of the major markets. New York was still a question. Chicago was still a question. And then all of a sudden we break the 100 months in a row of RevPAR and drop 0.2%.
Right.
Which really shook everybody. It just did. That's and then the question was, is that going to continue? So here we are, late summer, and that happens, and you're like, uh-oh, is this the first sign? Well, the strange part is then all of a sudden October and November rebound to be decent months. So I think 2018 globally was a solid year. We're still at all-time highs, but it was a very cautious year. Now, for Chesapeake, it was great. We added several new key properties in key markets. We saw some growth, but we also saw a lot of hotels either very close to their budgeted growth or a little bit below, which is the first time in probably 7 years that we've seen that. We've always see the hotels getting really close. We pride ourselves on being very accurate. And so what happened was we had a lot of markets do like 2% RevPAR. We even had a few, quite frankly, Glenn, that were surprises that were flat when we were looking for maybe 2.5 growth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so when I start seeing, out of the top 50 markets, I think like 16 are negative right now. So you got to watch some of these leading indicators that kind of show you what could be happening. So I'm going to go into 19 very thoughtful is how I would describe it. I think we have a strategy. We have a corporate meeting talking about our strategy and specifically what Chesapeake does. But I do think you're going to see a return to hyper-aggressive focus on the group segmentation because that has been performing. Transient's been weaker than expected. I think that the whole Marriott-Starwood merger confused a lot of markets. So we're still seeing a rebalancing of the business traveler on that whole huge segment of hotels. We have both. We have Marriott's and Starwood, and we've seen kind of the balance shifting between hotels. One market, an example, we had a Sheraton, but there was already, I think there's 18 other Marriott products. So once we became part of the family, where we used to own that market for that SPG traveler, now we're part of 19 hotels. So that's been an interesting dynamic to try and work through. I just think there's been a bunch of very interesting things that happened in 2018.
Well, that's a really fascinating notion, the whole idea of that Starwood Marriott merger actually really affecting certain properties that are out there. So you're finding that more people that were in SPG are now are willing to go out and experience more Marriott properties, but are you finding the opposite, that folks that were traditionally in the Marriott Rewards program are testing out some brands like Sheraton?
That's an interesting question. So, and it's early because
Right.
the full integration didn't happen until in some hotels as late as October 30th. Full integration of the rewards programs, they could use them.
Right. Man,
But
is that recent? I thought it was over the summer, and even then, it took forever.
Sheraton just occurred. I think October
Wow.
30th was the day
Wow.
it actually the full integration occurred. But I will tell you, if you want my initial answer, answer would be not yet.
Mm-hmm.
I have not seen. The one thing about Marriott travelers is once they're going to a market and they're happy with the hotel and they love Marriott, they stay there, and that's good. That's a good thing Marriott has. I haven't seen them venturing out because all of a sudden there's other options. Now, I don't have some of the major markets, so maybe that's happening in New York downtown. I don't know that answer, but we have not seen it yet. We've actually seen possibly a little softness because where some of the SPG hotels, the Starwood hotels, maybe a Sheraton, the location might be secondary to the primary Marriott, then we might have had a little bit of attrition to that main Marriott downtown or in the city center. Because a lot of our estate is, secondary, tertiary, or suburban locations.
Right.
So we've seen it kind of a different impact on our hotels.
That's fascinating. Now, you mentioned going into 2019 with the word thoughtful. I like how you're phrasing it. It's not panicking. It's not exuberant. It's just taking a moment and being careful about how you're going to proceed. Now, one of the challenges I could imagine you're having, and of course you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but if you've had 100 months of growth before the 0.2 down and up. So it's like, let's just say 103 months essentially of growth. 0.2% is hardly anything, right? So after all of these years, owners start to have a certain expectation. And if stuff begins to level off or has very tiny growth, that might be perceived as a negative when really it's still a continuation of the amazingness that's happened for the last 7-8 years. So how do you deal with that, if it's a problem at all?
Well, the biggest problem that comes out of that, and I've had, we just finished budget season, and I've had a number of these discussions, is the biggest problem that comes out of it is not that revenues are going to remain at near all-time highs. It's that some of the other things that I didn't share, that I can to now, is the cost of doing business continues to climb. So it's pushing out our middle. So our NOIs are getting eroded just because of the pure cost of doing business. And it's not because a company doesn't have great controls or operational controls. It's the fact that over the past 7 years, in times of plenty, while the hotels have done well, so have our linen suppliers, and so have our ground maintenance companies, and so have our elevator companies. And there's been natural growth in their costs. And what's happening is, now that we've hit sub-3 growth, and we're going to be some people saying 1.6 to 2.5, then we're going to be not. So you got to take this all the way back to all of the purveyors and the labor market. But all of our purveyors, they've got budgets too. So if you sell linen to Hilton or to Chesapeake or whoever, you got a budget to meet next year, and your budget might include 3% growth. Well, how are they going to get 3% growth when I'm getting 2%? And the only place to get that is from basically taking that 0.4 out of my profit margin if they're going to continue to grow their rates for linen.
Right.
So same thing with landscapers and everything else. So when I talk about being thoughtful, it's a conversation with our leadership team to say, okay, we need to be talking to our vendors and letting them know we are seeing a cooling off period. We expect you as good partners, we've been doing business with a long time, to accommodate us in that cooling off period, because we know that we need to share in this time, and it can't be a win-lose. And so that we're being thoughtful on the cost structure side and having those conversations now. And then, honestly, Glenn, I don't have an answer for you on labor.
Yeah.
Labor's moving up, and that's just the way it is. I mean, we have basically zero unemployment of those people that want to work.
Yep.
So that's a challenge.
Yeah, it certainly is. And I've spoken to you about labor on this program before, so I don't think we really need to go into that as much. But what I'm finding fascinating with this part of the conversation, Chris, is we're at the peak of the market, and we have been for a number of years now. So at what point in your way of thinking did being at the peak of the market turn from unbounded exuberance to, oh, I'm starting to get concerned because we can't continue to increase profits at as much or as a higher rate as expenses are starting to climb?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I would say that when I looked at our budgets across the portfolio, I would say that marginal performance, so the performance at the NOI on a marginal percentage, was generally flat. Now the increases are coming from ADR as we go forward this year. So you're still going to be able to get some flow through. Unfortunately, though, it's getting eaten up by the costs that are coming in from outside. So this year's going to be very, I would say this year's going to be a skinny year. I would predict 20 being a skinny year overall, with not super rapid expansion. But I would tell you, this is where I'll tell you Chesapeake, I believe, is different. Yeah. We have the ability and the small portfolios and the kind of the bandwidth to take it up a notch if we have to. We already know where we're going if business shifts. We know if we need to go downstream and grab some business from our competitors that sit one line below us, or if we need to go upstream to our competitors and who's staying at the hotels just above us in a tier that we can go get if they need to have a budget change. So we have I would call it kind of a crisis plan in place where I think that, we can make sure that we're driving forward just to stave off of those costs until we see a new rise. What I'm hoping, Glenn, is that this flatness we're seeing, I'm hoping, because we're right at the end of a 7-year cycle, okay? So
right.
We're right at the end. So I'm hoping that this is the trough. That's what I hope. I mean, I think that's kind of maybe a glass half full type hope, but right. I'm like, well, without a black swan, maybe this is the trough, this cooling off at 1 or 2%,
Yeah, I think that it very well could be. I bet if we thought about it, we could make an argument for either side of that. Either it is or it isn't, which is why I like that your line. It's you're really, half optimistic on this because I really feel that we've had definite structural change in society that makes people travel more often, be it for the weekend soccer games with the kids or other sporting activities, more leisure time, or just the importance of getting out there to have face-to-face contact with business. So I do think that we'll continue to be able to support a strong and vibrant hospitality business, just maybe not at the speed that folks in your position would like. So very, very clever. Before we wrap up today, is there any other big issues that you're thinking about in 2019 that you're either looking forward to or that are just, freaking you out?
No, somebody asked me the other day what I was really kind of focused on going forward, and there's two things that we're focusing on as a company. One is, and not to go down the labor road, but our culture is strong, but to make sure that everybody, we brought on a lady, Jane McCall, who runs the department called Corporate Culture and Communication, and she's out in the field making sure every one of our 3,000 associates understands what we mean by possibility, and also understands what the path is for their career and what they could make out of their career. because I think retention is your number one defense against labor cost, is retaining your current people and make sure you treat them well so you don't have turnover costs. And then on the other side, I mean, I'm thinking about I work with a tech company. I'm on an advisory board for a tech company
Cool.
that's associated with our business, and I'm thinking about big data and just really how artificial intelligence and big data can be applied to anticipatory needs of our guests, and also the sales and marketing side to leverage your dollars most effectively to get your message to only the guests that you have the highest chance of booking.
Right.
So
I think we'll see that, Chris, with the ability to make better connections with people that'll lead to better revenues from individuals rather than having to find more people, right, to come in and stay in your hotels. That combined with the next generation of automation that I see, where maybe you'll be able to cut back on a housekeeper or two because some of that labor will be done by machines. I really don't think at the end of the day we're going to see a lot of guest-facing robots, but I think we're about to enter a period back of house where we're going to get a lot of efficiencies and cost savings from automation behind the scenes.
I agree. I guess the last thing I'll tell you, I sat at dinner at one of the conferences with a gentleman who's working on a project for a robot that does housekeeping. Right. And I said, well, how's it going to clean the toilet? And he's like, oh, it's not a problem. Robots the articulations now can deal with circumference. First of all, the guy was hyper smart, which was super fun to talk to. But he just talked about how they can build the articulations of the robots to accommodate non-horizontal or linear surfaces that can be round. And I'm like, wow, that is amazing. So, we're going to see, Glenn, things that we just never thought as far as voice technology and just integration with, embedded software in phones and embedded technology. It's just going to be, our minds are going to be blown over the next probably 5 to 7 years.
Actually, I think in 5 to 7 years, our minds will just be owned by Google. But that's for another show, I think, right there. All right, Chris. Before we wrap up with you and I go to a commercial break, I got to give you a chance for a good shameless plug. How do people find you? How do people find Chesapeake? And anything else that you want to get out there?
Check us out at ChesapeakeHospitality.com. And I hope that everybody, however you celebrate the end of the year, has a great, restful time as we head into what will probably be another Spartan race of a year in 2019.
Yep, it sure will be. And Chris, I'll be seeing you out there at the Alice Conference come January 28th. Looking forward to that. I'll be in the middle of 3 weeks straight on the road, so I'm sure I'll be in an absolutely terrific mood by that point. But for right now, at the end of the year, I am feeling chill. I am feeling relaxed and absolutely loving having you on the show. And for all of you guys out there, thanks so much for listening all year long. I really appreciate the support and the love that I'm getting everywhere I go. I know that you're into this show, but let me know the types of stuff that you want to hear. I want to create content that you don't just appreciate, but that really motivates you and makes your lives better. And just remember this, you're all vibrating with love and light. You're pulsating with love and light. I will be back after this commercial message with another great interview. Have a happy new year, everybody.
Have a question for your host, Glenn? Tweet him now at Traveling Glenn. No Vacancy, the hospitality industry's #1 podcast. We'll be right back.
Hey everybody, Glenn here. So there's been a lot going on at Red Roof this year. I mean, it had the introduction of their soft brand, the Red Collection, their new extended stay option, Hometown Studios by Red Roof, but there's one thing you can't overlook, and that's the Red Roof brand itself. After all, Red Roof offers one of the highest RevPARs in the economy segment and has been #1 in online guest reviews 8 years running, according to Clarabridge. They're careful to make sure standards reflect guest expectations, are fully tested, and well priced. In fact, they manage about 20% of the system, so they have skin in the game as well. And of course, Red Roof Plus, the brand extension that created the upscale economy market with wood-like flooring, high-end bedding, spa-inspired baths, enhanced landscaping, and more, all of it based on customer research, and all having a dramatic effect on owners' financial results. Plus, Red Roof offerings come with the Ready Card, a richest-in-class loyalty program with more than 2.5 million members. and it all just happens to be the least expensive loyalty program there is for owners. Put it all together, and it's no surprise Red Roof has a franchise satisfaction of 94%. And those franchisees will tell you, genuine relationship, real results. It isn't just some slogan, it's just how Red Roof operates. To learn more, visit redrooffranchising.com or call 888-473-8861. That's redrooffranchising.com or call 888-473-8861. And tell them Glenn sent you.
Back to the show. It's No Vacancy, the hospitality industry's #1 podcast with your host, Glenn Hausman.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to the No Vacancy Podcast with me, your host, Glenn Hausman. Coming at you today from the Meritage Resort in Napa Valley, California. Wow, such a great time. I wanted to say that in case you heard a little noise that's going on in the background. But I'm with Mr. Simon Naudi, who's the CEO with Corinthia Hotels. How are you, sir?
I'm well, thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Great to see you today.
A great place to be.
It certainly is. I can't believe we're actually having a conversation after an amazing night of drinking wine and eating such great foods.
Perhaps a little bit too much wine.
I know. I kind of threw that in there just in case I'm not up to par. The listeners know why I'm making excuses right now. Because, here in the United States, we like to blame everyone else, not accept responsibility.
Yeah, that's great.
So thanks so much again for speaking with me. So, Simon, I think maybe to orient some of our folks, because we have a large listenership here in the United States, maybe you could share a little bit about the Corinthia brand and, where it is around the world. You most notably made a huge splash with the London property that opened up a couple of years ago, but you have close to a dozen properties, I think.
Yes, we do have. We actually own or operate 21 hotels as a business, but only 12 of them are carrying the Corinthia brand.
Right. So, yeah, you're actually a hotel investment fund that happens to have the brand as well as other properties.
Yes, well, the business started like a lot of hotel companies back in Europe. It started in 1962, in December 1962, when a Maltese family turned their quite a palatial villa, what was a palatial villa then, into a restaurant. And that was very successful. And then in 1964, Malta became an independent republic. We were part of the British Empire up to then. And part of that was the withdrawal of all Britain's navy from their base in Malta.
Right.
And that created the need to have a new economy, as opposed to one based on a military base in Malta, to one, in those days, of fledgling tourism. So the government and the British government chipped in as well, were available through the banks to give soft loans and some grants to young Maltese entrepreneurs to build hotels. And the family who owned that villa, the Pisani family of Malta, took advantage of that and built a 150-room hotel, the Corinthia Palace, in the gardens of this villa, which still stands today.
And Alfred Pisani is the chairman of the company today. Wow, so I had no idea it was a family company going back that far. Interesting. So what was it like? And I'm going to assume this is before you joined the company. You've only been there since the 1997?
20 years.
Okay. So I'm thinking back to that time. What must have been like to try to transform that economy and getting in the ground level on it, and the risk that they had to take? Because what if you build it and they didn't come?
Well, I think that's a very good question, actually, because I think now in today's Malta, which is an economically very successful country,
I can't even imagine a time before it was a major tourism generator.
Just the basics. Right. You couldn't find waiters who'd ever been in a 5-star hotel, or you couldn't find cooks, or you couldn't find... So the basics were really basic then. But you know what? With enterprise and determination, you can overcome anything.
Yeah.
And with solid values that have underpinned the business since then. So the Corinthia Palace eventually opened in 1968. And it was actually opened by the Duke of Edinburgh, who obviously the Queen's husband, who had a very close association with Malta because he was in the Navy. And actually him and the Queen lived in Malta before she became Queen, when she was still a princess.
Wow.
Yes, and the hotel opened, and since then it has been sort of, I would say, the grand dame of Maltese hotels. So it's got a lovely feel to it, a lovely boutique feel to it. And we have a lot of clients, including from the United States, who come there and use the hotel as a base to discover our wonderful little island.
So how has luxury changed then in the last 50 years, and how is that reflected in your newest product, the one in London?
Well, I would say many things have changed, but some things have not.
Right.
So obviously travelers 50 years ago and travelers today still want to be recognized, still want to feel like they are getting treated in a way which matches their expectation in terms of what they have paid and what sort of hotel they're looking for. So all of that has not changed in reality. What has changed is the way we today communicate with our customers, some of the facilities inside hotels. The point of being a hotel actually in many situations is beyond just being a hotel bedroom that also has breakfast downstairs. You know, the hotels today have moved into more and more services that our clients would like to have when visiting a place.
And what are some of those things that you're thinking about? Because when I hear about services, one of the conversations I have constantly is about being more authentic and part of the neighborhood and those kinds of things. Or maybe you're just going with a totally different approach to do complete pampering within the four walls and, kind of excluding what's going on outside the building.
Well, it's an interesting question. We've just actually had a whole exercise over a period of several months to after 50 years of this hotel open, our first hotel open, of diving back into the organization and trying to define the brand. And our objective was certainly not to have a brand that is defined by some focus group or some market demand. I mean, that's important, but we wanted the brand to be a reflection of who we are in our hearts and in our souls. And at the end of that, we came up with a slogan, which is we're going to be launching out sometime next year now, both internally with our colleagues and externally with our customers and guests, around the principle that we exist because we want to be uplifting lives. So we want to be uplifting the lives of our colleagues and give them opportunities for growth and learning and personal development in the organization. We're very proud of the fact that we have a lot of colleagues who've been many years with the organization. But we also want to turn and make sure that we communicate the brand as uplifting the lives of our guests who stay in our hotels.
Right. That's fascinating. So, forget about the guests for a minute. I want to talk about your associates and uplifting them. I love the whole notion of what you're really telling me is giving them a career path and a sense of security, being if they put the effort in. So how does this play out in the real-life experience of a Corinthia staff person?
Well, I would say the philosophy underpinning this is, in spite of us now being a public company and the numbers start becoming, for Malta standards, stratospheric. But still, we would like to remain at the core of family business. And in a family, like in any family, there are good times, there are bad times. The stronger will help the weaker. And if people run into trouble along the way in their lives, you stand by them. So that is sort of the principle that we're trying to do that. And that reflects itself in all our HR policies internally. We've had many situations where, we could have taken sort of more clinical routes and asked people perhaps not to be part of the organization anymore. But you know what? Everybody's good at something. So giving that opportunity to somebody to stay within the family, to stay within the company, and most importantly, enjoy their time with us. Because if you're enjoying your time in an organization as a colleague, as an employee, then that will 100% manifest itself in the service we give our customers.
Excellent. So what is today's ultra-luxury customer really looking for? A lot of answers I hear all revolves around time poverty, for example. But I get a sense that with you folks, it's a little more than that.
Well, our customers, first of all, they want the basics. So if you are going to operate in the space of luxury, you have to give the basics. The bedroom must be the right size. The bedding must be the right size. The toweling must be correct. The food and the drinks you serve and the way you serve it must be. So that's without that, you're going to get nowhere. There's no cheating in this space. And more and people are traveling more and experiencing more. So it's there's no way you can approach the business by trying to be a little bit cheeky and cut costs here or there. So our experience is that there are a lot of customers out there who are willing to pay and pay top dollar, to use your expression here in America, But we have to give them the basics and make sure that's right.
Yes. Thanks for speaking American, though.
Well, we have a lot of American customers. A third of our customers in our London hotel are actually from the United States.
Wow. Which makes a lot of sense. There's so much traffic between like New York and London, for example. That makes sense. But probably not as many Americans in the St. Petersburg property.
Not quite at the moment, but we have a lot of Americans in Hungary, for example, in our hotel in Hungary. In Malta, we want to build that business. The American customer, from a European perspective, I would say, is one of the best customers one can have. There is a sense of appreciation from the customer of what the hotel is doing and what the host city is trying to present itself. Mm-hmm. So from that respect and many others, we all love and welcome your customers in Europe.
Okay, so forget about us Americans for a minute. What do folks in other countries want when it comes to a luxury experience that's different than what Americans might want? You could talk about it through the St. Petersburg lens, or Budapest, or Lisbon, or Prague. Wow, Tripoli had a lot of cool locations, and Khartoum, which is a cool name for a city.
Yes, that's an interesting one, and it also is a reflection of the psyche of the nation from where our customers are coming from.
Right.
So, for example, the Chinese customer, which is becoming, at least in Europe, increasingly present, at the top end of the market, they're very much driven by the brand. Mm-hmm. So they want to be able to say, I was at the Corinthia Hotel in London, to use that example. Mm-hmm. In 20 years' time, perhaps their children will be even more discerning and focus a little bit more on what they are actually getting, as opposed to the brand recognition of what they are buying. So I would say it varies from country to country. We have a lot of corporate customers in some of our hotels, and principally from, say, Germany, into our Prague hotel or into our Budapest hotel. And what they want, being German, is a very efficient delivery of the service.
Right, and you'll be coming to, Brussels and Dubai coming up in the next couple of years as well. So what makes you want to go into a particular city? Is it just a matter of economics, or is it something else?
Our business is not your typical hotel company, in that we are not only hotel operators with our brand, but we are also investors and developers in some of our hotels. Mm-hmm. So our ambition and plan is to grow the business into several cities and resorts around the world. And in some instances, we do it with our own funds that we raise through our business. And we buy buildings. For example, that's what we just done in Brussels, where there is a very famous old hotel, the Grand Hotel Astoria, built in 1909 for the Belgian Expo, which had been in a noble family's ownership for 3 generations.
That's cool.
They then sold it to a Middle Eastern investor who shut it down and started a renovation, but somehow lost their way through it. So we bought it off them, and that's our money. And we're now next year we'll start a 2-year major investment program into this hotel.
Is it going to remain closed the entire time?
It's totally closed, and you wouldn't want to sleep there. It's an abandoned building right now.
Right, and then makes sense. You're not going to just rush anything to get some people in there. You're going to finish the whole thing.
No, we have to practically almost rebuild the hotel, except the facade, the ground floor, which is obviously an old palace, so it's totally protected, and we'll be restoring that part of the building. But in that instance, we look at that from the point of view of, is it a good investment? So did we buy it well, and can we build it at a price which will ultimately deliver a return to our shareholders?
Right.
And from a brand point of view, can we fill that hotel with the kind of customer that would want to stay in a Corinthia? And clearly Brussels is the capital of Belgium, but also a very important political center in Europe. And we believe there's a huge market there for which there is not yet a hotel of a certain standard. There are a couple of good hotels, but I mean,
you feel you could redefine what luxury is in that market, and therefore surprise everybody and swoop in and take good market share.
Precisely.
Right.
So that's an example of us investing. In other instances, people come to us and say, look, I own this hotel, or I'm about to build this hotel, but I have no clue how to run this hotel, and I've seen your properties in Budapest or London, and There are owners and developers who may not want to deal with the bigger brands for whatever reason. I mean,
Right.
the bigger brands give a service, but there is a niche for hotel operators like us of our size, which besides the actual service of the hotel and running the hotel, we obviously have a very personalized relationship as an operator with the owners of these hotels. So that's the case of two of our other hotels that are under development. One is in Dubai, where a spectacular 6-star hotel is under construction by a Dubai company. And they had a competitive process to choose an operator and a brand, and we came out on top of that. So we're supporting them in the design, development, and eventually, hopefully, when the hotel is completed at the end of 2019, early 2020, we'll have a Corinthia Hotel in Dubai as an operator.
How important is it for you strategically to have a flag in Dubai, which has really become a centerpiece of the financial world?
Well, Dubai is a capital in the Middle East. I mean, it is a center, a financial center, besides a tourism center and a center for many other things for the entire Middle East. So having a flag there and having an operation there in and unto itself is a business proposition that makes sense.
Right, it's as important as being in New York or London, as far as I'm concerned.
I would count it among the top capitals in the world. And it's also an advertisement for our brand.
That's right.
To the locals and the people who travel to Dubai. So when they come to London, they would have already had a notion of what the brand is all about.
So you guys are a medium, small to medium-sized company when it comes to brands. What are some of the advantages of being out there, on your own, as opposed to, just selling it all to a giant, we're a global hotel corporation?
There are tremendous advantages in today's world. First of all, if we decide something, it's done.
Yep.
We don't have to speak to 2,000-3,000 hotel owners who we run hotels for to come on board with whatever we want to do. We're small enough, and we own most of the hotels anyway, so if we decide this is the way we're going, this is the way we'll go. Technology too, and especially the distribution and the whole area of marketing and PR has leveled out the playing field.
Right.
And in that respect, actually, being smaller has a little bit more advantage of being able to be nimble in your social media and the way we channel our bookings and we handle the distribution of our services. So I would think there are far more advantages than disadvantages in being let's call it a boutique operator.
Right. I see, especially at the luxury side of the market, where you're appealing to a group of, for lack of a better word, more discriminating travelers that have a certain set of expectations. They're not worried about the points that they're necessarily going to get. So you're not fighting against the giant monoliths in that particular type of way. You're really appealing directly to people's expectations and what they hope to get from the service and just the overall experience.
Totally. And as you know, we are here in Napa because we're attending a meeting of CEOs of like-minded and like-sized hotel companies. And together we do have a loyalty program called Discovery.
And this is the Global Hotel Alliance, which Simon is referring to.
Yes. And all research points to the fact that customers are more attracted by recognition and reward in the hotel they're staying, as opposed to points they can burn and earn discounts elsewhere. I mean, that's a business model that works.
Yep.
But in our case, we believe recognition is the key priority of what we can deliver.
Right, because just people, when they walk in, they want to feel really good about themselves, and that recognition is a key element in order to deliver on that service promise.
Totally. And again, coming back to technology, today technology enables our associates to be able to recognize these people through the profiles in our systems, and that makes it much more easier to deliver that sense of recognition and belonging.
Excellent. So you joined the company just about 20 years ago, a little over 20 years ago. How did you wind up actually getting involved in the hospitality industry? I want to know a little bit about your journey. Where are you originally from? Which country?
I am from Malta myself.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. There's 400,000 Maltese, so that's not many of us.
No.
And in our home country, Corinthia is an institution. It's probably the largest private sort of non-banking or non-financial company.
All right, so that really frames everything really interesting to me, because if I was to get a job with Corinthia, it would be a cool company. But for you, it was a major part of a good chunk, if not your whole life.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yes. So I was doing something completely different in sort of real estate, and by chance met the founder of the business, who you referred to earlier, Alfred Pisani. And a few months later, he called me up and said, "Come on board." And we still have this sort of policy, unofficial policy. We employ thousands of people nowadays from all over the world. But back home in our corporate office, whenever we spot talent from Malta that may not have necessarily had international experience, because it's a very small place and a lot of people tend to stay home.
Right.
But talent is talent, and if you give people opportunities, they'll flourish anywhere in the world, whether it's in Europe or America or beyond. And so I was given that opportunity, and I've been with the company ever since.
That's terrific. Did you always have this position within the company?
Not at all.
So where did you start?
I started in let's call it, the company was much smaller then.
Yes.
Much, much smaller.
Yes, and you've seen it grow tremendously.
Yes.
I mean, you've got a great PR team. I happen to know Karen Bradford. She's been having me follow you guys well over a decade now. So it's been fun to see the journey that you've been on.
Lovely Karen, and hardworking Karen based in New York, yes. No, I joined in the hotel operating division of the business in sort of a semi-marketing role, and then ended up working directly with Alfred Pisani, a sort of sidekick, traveling around the world and doing deals with him.
And he was the CEO at that time before kind of moving up to the chairmanship.
Well, he was. I used to describe the organization. There was him and 5,000 people reporting to him. So he would want to get involved in big issues, but also a lot of small issues, a lot of personal issues of colleagues who've been with us for a long time. So as we grew, the company made a number of milestones. Let's start in 2000. In the year 2000, we turned the company into a publicly traded company. And that's the name of our holding company nowadays, International Hotel Investments PLC. So we brought in new shareholders. For example, eventually even the Investment Corporation of Dubai became a shareholder in our business. And that served to put structure and corporate governance around the business. So we didn't want to kill off the entrepreneurial spirit of the business. But obviously being public brings in a lot of disciplines and reporting requirements and processes for decision-taking, which is all very healthy, and saw us through the past 18 years now. So that was one big milestone, I would say, in the past 20 years. Another big milestone was when we bought and then built or rebuilt the London Hotel.
Right.
Up until then, we never really had sort of said it loudly, but we really were real estate investors. So I personally was in Kazakhstan looking at a piece of land, and saying, wow, this could be a good price and we could do this and that. And it didn't really matter whether it was, and Kazakhstan is a great country, but it didn't really matter whether it was Kazakhstan or Prague or somewhere in Africa or in America. As long as it was a good real estate deal, we'd go for it. With London, we quickly came to the realization that if we want to be in the space in such a major city, we've got to be a brand-focused company. And therefore, when I say London Hotel changed the company, it really focused what we look for to invest or what we look for to grow the business. So today, we will only look to buy and develop or operate hotels that are comparable to our London hotel, because we cannot have a situation where customers get a confused image or message from the business.
Because the London property, which has gotten many accolades, is very much at the the top of its game when you're talking about luxury. So the last thing you want to do is go ratchet it down a notch or two, right?
Well, we pushed the bar a bit too far, even for ourselves, perhaps, because it was quite. We never really sort of set our targets or where we went. We just rolled up our sleeves and built a hotel to the best of our abilities.
Right.
Never looked at competition or never worried too much about what's happening around us. We just we just did it in our own way.
Well, how do you do that? I mean, it's so natural for hoteliers out there to take a look around and take ideas from them or think about, what they are as competition. How do you have a singular vision and then deliver it without letting those outside influences kind of chip away at that vision?
Well, the way London came about is we bought a building which was originally built as a hotel in the 19th century and then turned into an office for Sir Winston Churchill. It was his office when he was a minister in the First World War in 1917, and then it stayed as the Ministry of Defence of the United Kingdom. It's where their Secret Service was based. I believe they had a secret room where they kept reports on UFOs and all this sort of... It's a very interesting building.
Yeah.
It was owned by the Crown, by the Queen's personal Crown. It's called the Crown Estate. And we bought it off them and turned it back to a hotel. So the bones of the building were there originally as a hotel. We did a major intervention. I mean, short of knocking it down and rebuilding it, but obviously it's a heritage building, so
right.
The facades. And I think we wanted to do 2 or 3 things. One, a lot of buildings from the 19th century are very dark because they didn't have large windows then, or because of heating and cooling in those days. So in our case, we opened up the building as much as we can. So there's a sense of space, a sense of light when you enter the hotel. And the second objective we had is we wanted, as we do in all our hotels, we wanted to be a London hotel.
Right.
So there are brands for all the right reasons, and as I said earlier, it's a business strategy that works, who want their hotels to be the same wherever they are. It's, let's say, McDonald's fast food, right? So a McDonald's in Tokyo, in America or wherever is exactly the same taste, same food. In our case, our strategy is to be local. So we wanted to be a British feeling. It's in Whitehall Place, so with a name like that, we...
Right. It's hard to get more British than that, right?
And that fed into things like all the art. All the art in the hotel is British artists. We have beautiful sort of paintings with cutouts that form butterflies, but when you look closely, they're actually maps of London cut out. The piece behind the lobby, when you check in, is a large bronze piece of art, and in it snakes an image, which is actually a replica of the River Thames. So there's all these little touches that give it a sense of place. And I think when we opened the hotel, a lot of customers suddenly realized, wow, this is a hotel that had a lot of thought that went into it and a lot of love that went into it.
Excellent. I love it. So what's, we're starting to run out of time here. So what is next for you folks after these 2 properties? What are some of the markets that you think would be great locations for the next type of Corinthia development?
We'd love to be in the United States.
Yes.
So we've been looking at several opportunities and properties, principally in New York, but not only. So it's a big focus for us to identify a property that can be developed as a Corinthia hotel in say, New York.
Right. I think that will do a whole lot of good, just like being in Dubai, to get the folks in the Middle East to understand what you are. If you had an outpost in New York or San Francisco or L.A., that could be very transformational to people understanding who you are.
It'll be another major milestone, which beyond the one hotel that we may be talking about in New York, for example, will have a ripple effect which will change the company.
Right.
And equally at the other end of the globe is China. We haven't, I'll be very open about this, we haven't figured out, or we haven't had the opportunity to be very specific in China, or to look at, we've looked at some opportunities, but China is by its sheer size and wealth being created there will be a huge market in itself. And more than that, there's hundreds of millions of people who are going to begin to start traveling in the next 10 years. And they will come to Europe, they will come to the United States.
And they're already starting to travel domestically. To put it into context, their middle class is the size of the entire United States population.
That's it.
Which is an unbelievable thing. And they have more cities that are much bigger than New York that we've never heard
even heard
for
of.
Example.
Never even heard of,
which is absolutely incredible. I mean, there's got to be 20 or 25 cities that are bigger in China before you even get to New York. So a huge world of opportunity. But the challenge there is to understanding the the governmental and cultural nuances and how all of that comes together for you to be able to do a development that's done the right way and that is profitable and that you get to hold on to.
Yes. Well, minor challenge.
Yes. But other than that, it's perfect.
Other than that, it's great. And to latch on to what we were talking about earlier, it is a nation driven by brands because it is the reference point by which they can measure whether they are taking on a successful brand or not. So the image of that brand is very important, and hence why we should be in China, or why we want to be in China.
Excellent. So wrapping up, I'd love to give all my interviewees an opportunity for a good shameless plug. So how could we find you or the company or any of your specific hotels? Whatever you want. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It's not every day we get something for free.
Right? Oh, it's going to cost you.
Well, if you want to learn more about us, I, above all else, invite you to come and visit us in Malta. It is a fantastic country. It's probably the oldest country on earth. Our temples are 1,000 years older than Stonehenge, and we have history all throughout the modern age. I mean, we were the base for the Knights of Malta, the Knights Templar, so our capital city and a lot of our cities were actually built by the Knights. So, above all else, come and visit us. Before you do that, you can get to our website and see something about our hotels and where we are. That's Corinthia.com, to use your opportunity to plug the company.
Excellent.
And if you're heading our way, I'm sure our colleagues will make sure that you are well looked after.
Beautiful. All right. I love it. And I want to thank Simon for being here today. This was a really terrific conversation. I love getting to speak to non-American hoteliers. Really educates me, educates my audience, and opens my eyes up to a totally different way of doing things. I think sometimes us Americans think it's our way or the highway, to use one of our cliches. So to really be exposed to how different cultures are doing things is absolutely fantastic. So Simon Naudi, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you very much.
So for me and Simon, this is Glenn Hausman, and I will be back next week. That is unless I decide to move to Malta and join the Knights Templar. See you guys next week.
Thanks so much for listening to No Vacancy, the hospitality industry's #1 podcast, with your host, Glenn Hausman, online at rouse.media, on Twitter at Traveling Glenn, and on Facebook.com/Glenn.Hausman. We'll catch you next time.